Like most conspiratorialists, I wanted it to be a conspiracy. But I kept trying to think of how a conspiracy could have put the thing together. And I must say I failed notably. I couldn't figure it out. The internal evidence just wasn't there. There were too many odd moments that just didn't add up. Oswald was always seen as this illiterate who was sort of stupid and didn't have too much on the ball. And that was not Oswald's view of himself. His intelligence was there. He wasn't a great intellectual, but he was a fairly good one. And for an uneducated intellectual, he was damn bright. I've heard him on radio shows, and there he handled himself very well.
Several American parties in several countries are based on Marxism, such as Ghana. Certain countries have characteristics of a socialist system, such as Great Britain with its socialized medicine. These, then, are the differences between an outright communist country and countries which adhere to leftist or Marxist principles.
He was fascinated with Adolf Hitler, not because he believed in any of Hitler's ideas, but Hitler showed him, in his mind, that you can start way at the bottom of society, unemployed, virtually helpless, in no place at all, and you can rise to be a very, very powerful man.
Oswald had already done some difficult things. He had gotten into the Marine Corps and gotten out of the Marine Corps falsely on a hardship discharge. He'd gone by himself to the Soviet Union. He had gotten the Russians to accept him as a defector. And then when he decided that he wanted to go back to the United States, he managed to take a wife with him. He'd done very difficult things in his life, and he'd done them alone. Anybody who thinks that he wasn't capable of planning something and carrying it off alone is wrong. Even wronger would be to think that somebody else could get him to do anything they wanted him to do. He didn't do anything with anybody.
What diminishes the idea of a conspiracy in my mind is not that one can't think of a good reason why one couldn't put a conspiracy together, but it's the passage of time. One has to take that into their reckoning as we covered, decade after decade. Not a shred has come out that would indicate what this conspiracy was. After 40 years, none of the theories pan out.
Americans are prone to paranoid thinking. The belief that there must be a story that can be told that explains how awful things happen is a potent one. The belief that tiny cabals of people are actually pulling the strings runs back into the book of Revelations. The sign of 666, the beast is the CIA, is, whoever, choose one, or choose several, and kaleidoscopically maneuver the actors to make it all seem to make sense. These superstitions imply that what most people do and think is irrelevant, that somewhere there'll be a bunch of people in a room somewhere who will actually make things happen.
The more I studied him, the more I came to know him, Oswald's character became more and more defined for me. He had a great many political ideas, and he wrote long passages about the ways in which society should be designed. He was a futurist and a utopian to a degree. I think what he believed was that the route to power was not closed as far as he was concerned. So that by himself, whether he's talking to conspirators or not, Oswald came to the conclusion that he could bring this off, that he could commit this crime, that he could yet be a very, very powerful man. And that was worth it, because he was leading a miserable life.
As Marina explained when I was interviewing her for the book, several months before the assassination, Lee came in sort of wild-eyed and sweaty, and he said, "I shot Walker." Edwin A. Walker was a well-known right-winger, and he lived in Dallas.
Well, the police from the city came in to investigate a rifle shot that was fired into the house, fired through the west window.
The failure to hit Walker, very close failure though it was, is the Rosetta Stone of the Kennedy assassination. It showed that Lee really wanted to kill someone. Oswald found out on Tuesday, when I believe there was a big story in the Dallas morning newspapers, that Kennedy's route would go past the building in which he worked. And in the morning, he woke her up, kissed her, and said he was leaving money for her on the bureau. And then he went off with something in a bundle. Late in the afternoon of the 22nd, she looked at the bureau where Lee had left her his money, which was $70, but she looked inside of an old cup, and inside was his wedding ring.
Marina, for years, has been haunted by the fact, was she to some degree responsible? But I think what Oswald saw was that if he committed the crime, if he assassinated Kennedy and got away with it, then he would have an inner power that no one could ever come near. And if he was caught, well, then he was quite articulate. He would have one of the greatest trials in America's history, if not the greatest. And he would explain all his political ideas. And he would become world famous and might have an immense effect upon history, even if he was executed. So there he was. He knew that he had this opportunity, that Kennedy was going to drive by the Texas Book Depository. One can only imagine the terror and the excitement and the inspiration and the woe that sat on him with the knowledge that he could do it. It was possible to do it. That there were conspiracies being contemplated, even attempted on that day, I'm perfectly willing to accept. But the conclusions I came to were, for me, rational ones. Because he had a motive for doing it, because he was capable of doing it, because he wanted to do it. When he shot Tippit, I think at that point he knew he was doomed, because he could no longer make the great speech. But if you shoot a policeman, forget it. You're a punk. And so after he was caught, he did nothing but protest his innocence and say, "I'm a patsy." Oswald is a ghost who sits upon American life. It's a ghost that lay over a great many discussions of what are some of the real roots of American history. What's abominable and maddening about ghosts is you never know the answer. Is it this or is it that? You can't know, because the ghost doesn't tell you.